So, hi everybody, welcome back. Today we have Dr. Sarath Davala with us, who's a sociologist based in Hyderabad. He's been a professor at the IIM Bangalore and a sociologist for the last 20 years. He's the coordinator for the India Network for Basic Income and the vice president for the Global Basic Income Earth Network. Thanks a lot, Sharath ji, for joining us.
Thank you, Keshav. Lovely seeing you after a long time.
It's a real pleasure to have you on board. Yeah? So
Yeah,
I thought we could start with if you could tell our audience about the concept of basic income and maybe your journey towards it and how you landed up here.
yeah. I mean, it goes by several names. I think the most popular name in India is Universal Basic Income. It's basically the idea is that every citizen, and I should say citizen, I should say every normal resident, because there could be people who are not citizens.
Yeah.
So every normal resident of a particular territory, which we have called nations and all that, should be entitled to a certain minimum income unconditionally, periodically. So there are five very important characteristics because there are several things are being called basic income. They may be, may not be. So most important is it is universal, which means that everybody gets it. Rich, poor, man, woman, able, super able, disabled, everybody. Okay. It's periodic. Usually in urban areas, we understand periodic means not weekly, but monthly. It as opposed to one-time grant in a year or twice a year, things like that, and universal as opposed to targeting, saying that only the poor will get it, or only these guys will get it, or only the senior citizens will get it. So that's called targeting. So this is universal, never targeted. And the third is it's individual as opposed to household. So normally all the benefits that are given are to the entire household, whereas this is individual, means every man, every woman, and every child will get this money. And it's only cash and not any smart card or any coupon or any voucher or discount, things like that. It has to be hard cash, which you normally use in the economy, and not any special currency, which will be applicable only in this kind of shops and that kind of shops. Sometimes some countries do it like to stimulate certain sectors or to promote and encourage certain sectors. That is the fourth one. It's only cash. And finally, the most important one and the real cutting edge of this concept is unconditional. No conditions at all, that it will be for a period of 3 years, and after that we will review your performance, whether you will be using it properly or not. Nothing like that. It is completely unconditional. And some people add one or two other characteristics, but it's kind of not we have not taken it on board as official definition of BN. It's a right and not a scheme, which means that people have a legal right. Which means it's non-withdrawable. Like, for example, parties change and then say this is scrap, you can't remove it. Like our National Food Security is an act, NREGA is an act. They're all legal rights unless you completely demolish them or repeal them, whatever. So those are the things that are people normally add. In Europe, they also add that it should be high enough and all that. But those are people are all adding in many places. But then these five are the most important characteristics of this concept. So that's the basic definition of it. It's not that others are all corrupt versions, but they are like could be steps towards the final goal.
Right. So how did you personally get involved in this? I mean,
okay. See, after I quit my job in IIM, I wanted to go to the voluntary sector and I wanted to work in the rural areas. So that's why I came across SEVA, Self-Employed Women's Association, and I got an opportunity to evaluate one of their programs in Madhya Pradesh. So I went there. Then they said that after the evaluation, they said that, can you help us to continue to research part and then a little bit of strategy and all that. I said, fine, I will definitely do. So that's how I started way back in 96, 97. Then in 2010, Seva asked me that, would you like to head a research project, which is related to unconditional cash transfer? And Guy Standing, who was one of the co-founders of BN, has been working with Seva for a long time, actually, doing research projects with them. So he was the principal investigator of the project, and I was the director of the project in terms of, so he's an economist and I was a sociologist. So initially I was very skeptical about this idea. This is not a part of our kind of grammar, our grammar of welfare. You never give money. You think that money, this is what we have learned, all of us have learned, that money is fungible. Money can be used for paying tuition fees for your child. It can be used to buy a bottle of liquor. Not that buying bottle of liquor is bad, but the point is that this is seen as a temptation good in economics, and that is seen as a development, pushing development. So I said that, what is the point? You give money and that's all. Of course, people will be happy. Who will be not happy when they are given money? So what are we testing? What is that we are doing, in a research project? So I was a little skeptical. But at the same time, I must also add that 20 years of doing evaluations across the world, different countries, I've evaluated development programs, and I used to go on behalf of the donors. So I used to bring back research material and write a report. So I think each time I used to come back from any such field, I used to be a little disillusioned, a little disappointed that something somewhere is not working, something, the NGO becomes the medium, the middle person, and the entire program becomes a factor of the integrity of the NGO, and then how well efficiency. So both the commitment and the efficiency of the NGO, and you can put it on the spectrum, all these things. So I used to always wonder whether our traditional and conventional modes of development, how we want to develop them, how we want to quench their hunger. It's always they, and we are the designers of the policy and the programs. And so we are the givers and they are the takers. So I was very uncomfortable with that, the conventional development program, and billions of dollars are spent on that. But this 2 years of this intense work in the villages has completely, really, I'm talking about 2010, 2011, 12, 13. It has completely transformed the way I thought about intervention, the way I thought about people, the way I thought about development. I think development in quotes. So I saw something happening when you give something unconditionally and leave it to the discretion of people and say that you spend it according to your priorities. You decide what you want to do with this cash. We are not going to tell you that, you grow papayas or you grow something else, or you start making solar lights and all kinds of stuff, the development programs. So I said, there is something really magical about it. And I think that's what we wrote in the book. That's what I've been talking about last several years now, 7, 8 years or nearly. So that's how I got introduced to the topic. And I was so convinced that I decided to be, I've been more than full-time advocate of that ever since 2014, when we completed the project and brought out a book. I've been very actively involved in both India network and also the global network. So that's the long and short of my journey.
So you mentioned Seva MP.
Yeah.
I believe that's where the pilot project was launched, right? Could you tell us something about that project and how that panned out?
Yeah, that was in 9 villages. It was actually 2 different projects, 2 pilots. One was the general villages, caste villages, and then one that I think there we gave about 6,000 individuals. We gave money in the villages, and the other pilot was one tribal village, which had about 800 or 900 people in that one single village. The durations are different in these two pilots. Now, we gave to rich and poor, we gave to everybody, every single resident of that village was given. Uh, I mean, some of the things that I'll just top 2, 3 results of that study. One was here you had small farmers like बीघा बोलते हैं ना 1 बीघा 2 बीघा 4 बीघा है 5 बीघा है and so but then their cultivation does not feed them completely, so in addition to cultivating they are also doing wage labor for other farmers in the neighboring villages or in the same village. Now one of the things that came out in this study was that when we gave for 18 months. We asked them in the beginning, what is your occupation? How much time do you spend in A, in B, in C? So there are two important components in their occupation profile. They said that 70% of the time, 65% of the time, or 60% we spend as wage laborers, and the rest we spend as the cultivators. Okay. Now, after 18 months, by then they had gone through a couple of cycles of crop cycles. साल में 2 होता है तो 1.5 साल में तो 3 हो गए. So by the end of the project, it actually got reversed. That I'm spending 40% as wage laborer and more as. So, in the process, we also saw the livestock really doubling, and production and productivity also increasing, and that was really quite a striking result of this basic income. So people, when they have a small asset and they have not had capital to put it into that asset, they used to go and borrow money to cultivate that land, and when they could not borrow, they stopped cultivating, things like blah blah blah. It was very, so when they had this cash flow, they started cultivating. So that was one important thing. As I said, livestock increase, which means that in productive assets, you know that Bakri gives it reproduces twice a year. So you have for 2 years, which means that you can just exponential growth of Bakris. You will have all over Bakris all over, and Bakri in a village is like. In fact, Keshav, you were also there in that village for one of our shoots. The Bakri at home is like money in the bank, because you can just go to the market and sell the Bakri and get your cash. So those I could see those dynamics. And the other thing is, for example, a question of employment. Now, it's not that we have given a lot of money every month. It is the only thing is it was regular. The moment it is regular, I can borrow from Keshav and I say, Keshav, I'll give you next month. You know that I can give you because I'm getting this money every month. So I become bankable, or my credit worthiness goes up, So then what I do is that instead of borrowing from one very exploitative money lender, people shifted slightly to borrowing from neighbors, because the liquidity in the village was known to everybody. That is one. The other thing, that the small little choices, other choices they made was like on the regard to employment, you can have a very exploitative employer and a relatively less exploitative employer. I mean, all employment is exploitation. It's only a matter of degree. So in that, you see that people are slightly shifting from one employer to another. So those small shifts, when you add up, they suddenly you can see a perceptible change in somebody's way of life, or what you call the working conditions or living conditions, those small little things, we saw that those small incremental changes, because of this continuous cash flow. So a family is given, an individual is given 300 rupees in those days, like nearly 10 years ago. Um, so you have 6 people in a tribal village, you have 6 per family. So they don't individually spend their money, they pool the money, the family pools the money. So you already have 1,800 rupees per month. You put together 3 months thing before the sowing season comes, you have a little more than that, you have 5,000 plus. So you can buy your seed, you can buy your fertilizer, you can buy things like that. So that's how cumulatively. Anyway, so those are the things that I personally saw, because we just went and sat in the villages, because I was but personally in charge, personally doing the ethnography, the stories of what is happening within each family, what are the family dynamics. So that was completely, it was a kind of a life-changing moment for me in my professional life. So that's what we saw in the pilot study. I mean, that was, in fact, today everybody talks about the pilot study. That was one of the largest and a fully universal basic income model.
So what about globally in other parts? Because one question that comes to my mind is now 300 rupees per individual in a village, in a tribal village in MP, is one thing, but that would have to change with a different demographic, with a different per capita income and so on, right?
Yeah.
So have there been studies abroad in more prosperous regions, in urban areas, for example, and so on, where it's been universal and you have results from there?
Well, see, there have been many pilots. I don't say that this is, as a policy, this has been implemented anywhere in the world. Like in Alaska, they had this Alaska Permanent Fund, from where every Alaskan gets an annual check, irrespective of whether you're rich or poor. That was one particular, that's money from the oil, you know. So they put this money into a permanent fund, and that kinds of gets accumulated and all that. Now that's an annual check. But apart, when Finland was, government itself initiated a pilot project, but that was just a handful of unemployed people. So instead of giving unemployment allowance with 86 conditions and 300 inspectors watching over you, whether you are really living alone, or you're living with someone, or you're really poor, or blah, blah, blah. Uh, so they said that instead of all that, can we cut the administrative cost, and can we really give unconditionally and see how it works? Will people, blah, blah. That was a pilot in Finland. Similarly, in Namibia, even before the Seva MP pilot, Namibia, they had a pilot in Namibian village. Again, now there's an organization called Give Directly in the US. They are trying out a massive project in Kenya for 12 years. They are giving it for 12 years and see what is it, what they wanted to disrupt the regular development kind of work, and um, try to see if giving directly actually helps. So the logic was like, and they are basically coming from the corporate world, and there are 2 people. One is a professor in university, and the other is a corporate guy. So they said that $300 billion go every year, go out of US every year, both as official aid and also by individual giving. So they said that, what they call, there's no bang for the dollar. You don't get the bang for the dollar. If you put in a dollar, you spend 60% or 70% are transmission losses, not transmission losses, but administrative costs and all that. So they said that all this is bullshit. Cut that bullshit and give money directly to people, and let's see. So there is an MIT, there is of course, all of us know Abhijit Banerjee, who got the Nobel Prize this year. Abhijit has been behind lab in poverty, JPAL, it's called JPAL, Jamal something, Poverty Action Lab. So they are specializing in the random control trial methodology. So Abhijit is, JPAL is actually doing the evaluation of this 12-year long project in Kenya. And of course, in India, we had Seva thing. But in US, a couple of mayors, in fact, now a couple of mayors actually formed a coalition for basic income, mayor coalition for basic income. So there's a place called Stockton. And the Stockton mayor, he introduced last year a pilot project in Stockton city. So like that, you have many such experiments all over the world. And I think all those, for example, Finland experiment is telling us that people's mental health has improved. People are much happier. But then the kind of labor market changes that government intended, they did not happen. It's not that people are sitting at home and enjoying, but the point is that this kind of giving for 1 year basic income has really improved the quality of their life, and unconditionally. I'm sure you must have heard your friends in Europe talking about poverty trap. You know, you get trapped into that, and if you get out of it, you may lose all the benefits, and you don't want to take up a job, because the moment you take up a job, what you are going to get, it will be less than this. So why should I? So those kind of, they're all the poverty traps and all that. So anyway, that's the mixed. It was not a failure. People write, media immediately started writing, oh, it's a failure because people were just happy but not productive in the economy. But that's not the case. That's not the case. And it is a pilot project done by government. So you can see, you can imagine, when you do research, knowing very well that this is the government doing research, the responses to questionnaires, you can imagine they may not be ideal answers. They may be very answers which will protect their basics and all that. Oh, so globally, for example, you take South Korea. In South Korea, there is one other mayor who said, I'm going to give an unconditional basic income to youth starting from 18 to 21, because that is a very crucial transition time for young people. And South Korea has a very, very, very cruel education system, competition and all that. So he wanted to ease that out, ease their costs. So something like that. Now, I think he became, the same mayor became subsequently the governor of one big province. And he again introduced something he calls, but he introduced cash, but in terms of a smart card, where he wants to promote the small and medium sector. So you have this wide variety of, so the problem is it's a global idea, but the dilemmas and the responses are all local. So each country, each society is coming out with its own way, its own definition of what should be given unconditionally. Like, for example, if you take a philosopher like Philip Vamperi, or even Guy Standing, who are the founders of BN and also the leading scholars of basic income, they say that basic income is not about poverty. It's not about poverty elevation. But in India, basic income is stitched into the poverty discourse, poverty discussion. Because poverty is the elephant sitting in the drawing room. You can't talk about basic income without talking about poverty. So in India, it's about this. In somewhere else, it's about something else. In Europe, it's more about freedom. I don't want to be forced to be doing X job. I should have choice. I should have freedom not to do it. I should do something else. Things like that. So globally, there are lots and lots of experiments, particularly now, last 10 years, I think a lot of excitement, a lot of interest. And for example, UNDP has come out with document, and World Bank has come out with a new document, and then ILO has been very conventional. They have not really come on board on this topic, but UN system has by and large now, example BN, as BN, we are actually having conversation with UNDP to see how we can work together. So I mean, there's a lot of excitement all over the world about basic income, and how do we understand basic income and how do we apply. Now, for example, take COVID. In COVID times, um, Trump Trump gave a check of $1,200 to people of a particular, it's targeted. People who earn less than $100,000 per annum are the people who will get that. Or for example, Brazil, if you take Brazil, Bolsonaro president,
Bolsonaro, huh?
who's now self-isolating because uh, he was really against something like this, basic income. Even also about Bolsa Familia was another program like basic income in Brazil. Now he announced a package which goes to like about 60 million people, which is more than 1/4 the population of Brazil. And indirectly, it goes to another 50 million people. So nearly half the population is covered in the new scheme, what he calls, I think it's called, they wanted to call it Corona voucher, but they said, no, that's not a good way. They call it worker allowance, I think, worker emergency allowance or something. Now, they have allocated it for 3 months, which is good money, 600 reals. 600 reals is like $150 or $120 or something, which by Brazilian standards itself is like minimum wage, good, a little more than half minimum wage and all that. So 3 months, and maybe it could be for 6 months. So you can see that globally so many things are happening, but really the point is the unconditionality is the central core of it. So we can say, we can take our what you call gold testing, what do you call that? So we can say that, let us go and see, is this really 100% basic income, or is this is impure, or 24 karat or 15 karat and all that. But you can actually analyze taking these 5 characteristics and say that to what extent it fulfills the ideal basic income. So you have a rich variety globally.
So coming back to India, which is, a highly subsidized population in a sense, where you have other schemes and the red tape and all that comes with it, as you mentioned. How do you look at it as a concept within India, and how is the system going to gear up to kind of reach that goal? And I'm sure you're in touch with a lot of people in the system. So how do they see this idea?
Well, see, in India, I think that can be a separate session in itself, because there is so much to say about India, and we are actually, I'm personally so invested into analyzing in India. Now, broadly looking at it, if you take our welfare thinking, okay, so I say that both in design and in delivery, both are problematic, have been problematic in India right from the beginning. Okay, now you say the problem, the design is that we have always thought of subsidies, providing subsidies, food subsidy, fuel subsidy, and fertilizer subsidy, oil subsidy, you name it. And I think we also have seen over the years that subsidies have not been a successful way of either supporting the consumer, citizen, or from the point of view of efficiency also. Because there's always the problem of delivery. We have not been able to deliver also. Now, given a situation like this, I think right from 2014 or 2015, that there has been a long discussion about the Food Security Act. And at that time, there was a new thing came called DBT. So what was happening, for example, let's take one. Government also said that, we have to now clean up the system, in the sense, like, for example, in the past, we take, for example, the cooking gas subsidy that we give. Now, there was a time when cooking gas, what the government was doing was they used to ask the oil companies to reduce the price, the selling price, because people can't afford so much. So you sell it at price Y, and the gap between X and Y is what we will give you. The government will give the company. Okay. Now that system they wanted to change because it had become very inefficient, and then a lot of corruption and a lot of leakages and a lot of transmission losses and blah 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 and all that. So they said that oil companies, by then I think a few private companies also had come into the picture. Now they said, oil companies, you do your business and you sell according to your price. We are going to give the money to the consumer, the end consumer. Okay, so they told everybody that all of you open bank accounts, all of you have Aadhaar cards. We will link Aadhaar card and the bank account, and we will send you the money. Okay, they gave a deadline, gave a deadline, and all that, and then finally they said, after this, no. And then they also put a cap on how many cylinders you can have. Otherwise, earlier it was unlimited. Okay. Now, by doing that, in fact, it was a very good thing they did. They say each year they save something like 12,000 crores. I mean, what used to go in transmission losses, instead of going into the transmission losses, it has remained with the government. And I have, and after that, what the government, the prime minister came on this thing, and he made an announcement that you give up. Mukesh Ambani, you can afford to buy your own cooking gas. You don't need a subsidy. I don't have to put this 300 rupees into your bank account. So I said, Mukesh Ambani gave up, Amitabh Bachchan gave up, and then so people started giving up. I believe nearly 1 crore people, or I don't more people, just gave up. So I see that as really cleaning up system, because you shouldn't waste money. We have limited resources, and we can't afford to waste it. Okay. Now, a similar thing was also about the food. Food Corporation of India is this huge monster which has the responsibility to procure wheat and then do the public distribution system. So anyway, let me come back, let's stick to the cooking gas. In cooking gas, government said that this is really, really a good system. So I have never seen, I've been following this very, very closely since 2012, I think 2012, or even before the Congress government itself started this whole thing. I have not heard anyone complain that I did not get my money, which means the system worked. And also they have expanded by doing Ujjwala program, which they started giving gas to the really vulnerable sections and all that. So now, this being a very good experience for the government is looking at it from the point of view of governance and efficiency, administrative efficiency, and perfect. That is the job of a government. They should be doing it. So they said, shall we do this with rice, wheat, food subsidy as well? But I think the whole thing got so polarized. Right to work people, right to food people thought cash walas are the enemies, and then it got so polarized. I think National Food Security Act got actually enacted, and many states have tried to clean up the system, but it is such a big mess, that it has not been as successful as the cooking gas reform that they have done. So in India, one thing is that we are coming from a trade union, because the pilot was done by a women's trade union. They are coming from the problems that their members were facing. Their members are like, extremely rural, tribal workers and agricultural workers, street vendors in the city and all that. The logic of the union was that the government allocations are increasing, like NREGA allocations have increased, from somewhere they have gone up to 45,000 crores. And even the PDS allocations have increased. 130 lakh, 1 lakh 30,000 crores. And if you add the state, what the states are providing, typically what happens is that central government gives the grains to the state governments at a price of something like 8 rupees or 9 rupees per kilo. And the state governments, all state governments are doing it. They put some 8 rupees subsidy, and 1 rupee, people get 1 rupee ka rice and 1 rupee ka wheat. Okay. Now, the thing is that they tried to, I don't know, I lost the thread. The government, from the government point of view, I was at the union's point of, from the union point of view, they said that our people are not getting the delivery of the allocated funds. Forget about new funds. What is already there as a legal right, they are getting wheat in Madhya Pradesh, for instance, they are getting wheat, which is of a very poor quality, quantity, 5 kilo, 4 kilo ho jate hain when you have to clean up. And then that itself is very rotten. So those questions have always been there. And Madhya Pradesh is a wheat growing state. And most probably you may be sending, I think the local procurement also a new reform. But earlier they were procuring from Punjab and giving it to Madhya Pradesh people. Can you believe that? That kind of ridiculous things were happening in the system for a variety of reasons. So the union said that, instead of doing this kind of jhamela, our people, our organizers are spending half their time to get what is already a right. So why should they be doing that? They should be doing something else, the organizers of the union. So you said cash may be a good idea. So give them cash. It's easier. These days you have mobile money, you have bank accounts, and you have it's easier to give. So these are a wide, then whereas the government is looking at it, for example, in 2017 economic survey, which government submits to the parliament at the time of budget, one day before the budget, had a full chapter on universal basic income. At that time, Chief Economic Advisor Arvind Subramaniam was very keen on universal basic income from the point of view of the Ministry of Finance, economy. This is one way of cleaning up the system, that's what was his, and Arvind has been an academic and he has been writing right from 2008 about cash transfers and the why cash transfers are a better way of dealing with the issue rather than this kind of a subsidy kind of approach to reducing poverty. Now, so that was the effort coming from them, and from us the effort was about delivery system. And then the third angle is about social justice. Philosophically looking at it, we as advocates, we talk about basic income as a way of bringing about equity in the society. So in India, we are having all these kinds of discussions, and I think we have a very rich discussion in India about basic income. Because you can't label universal basic income idea as either left or as right. It falls outside this binary. इसमें लेफ्ट वाले भी इसको गाली देते हैं, राइट वाले भी गाली देते हैं, लेफ्ट वाले भी प्रेम करते हैं, राइट वाले भी प्रेम करते हैं. So you're I can go into why they are opposing, what are the criticisms and all that. I can go into that, but I think I've spoken for a long time. Maybe you want to ask something.
No, I'd like you to go into the criticisms actually, because as you said, there's a philosophical point there. And a lot of people would also say that if you start, there'll be complacency in a society if you just start handing out money and so on, So I'd like you to speak actually about some of the criticisms and how that's to be dealt
Yeah.
with. Also, a matter of how feasible is this universally, and how that will be juxtaposed against, say, the tax net or things like that. The how the resources are to be procured and how feasible it is to enact it universally.
Yeah. See, this, I'll just quickly run through these issues. For example, universal. The idea of universal is an issue, not a problem. Is an issue in every country. Okay, people have always been doing very targeted stuff and not universal. But way back, if you remember, I don't know, you won't remember. I remember when I was a child, our PDS system was universal. Everybody had it. Everybody had a right, even the rich or the poor. But subsequently, it became targeted. Anyway, the reason why, as a concept, as a pure concept, why we say universal is that basic income should not be seen as a welfare measure. It should be seen as an automatic entitlement because you're born in this land. It's like a voting right you have, there is no for rich people there is no fast track. Everybody stands in the same queue and votes and comes back. You feel when you do that you are actually occupying the position of a citizen, the citizenship, rather than as a citizen you're standing there, rather than as a poor person or as a disabled person or as a special category person or something else. So when I say citizen, please understand it as a normal resident rather than citizen, I don't want to get into that aspect. Now, so there is in a society, there should be a sense of solidarity between classes, between castes, and between different social groups, So this universal basic income should be something that binds people rather than divides people. So it is the solidarity aspect is a very important idea that as a citizen, you should be entitled. That's all, period. Not as any particular category, So that is one. Now, well, now when it comes to implementation and the discussion and also the ideal answer by by economists who support basic income is that you give universally, you claw it back from the rich through taxation. Okay. Now, which means that administratively also it is simpler just to give everybody and take it back from the rich. Fine. If you don't do that, if you say, I'm going to tax rich and use that money for the poor, you're actually dividing the society. That which should not be the case. It should not be seen like that. Everybody should be entitled and people should forego. If you don't, they don't. That's the idea. Now, I would personally recommend in a situation like normally what happens is when there is money for welfare, so-called welfare. Hello?
Hello.
Yeah,
Come
there was,
back.
I think there was, yeah,
Please go on.
frozen. Yeah, when normally social spending. I can't hear you.
Okay, there's a little, 1 sec. I'm just pausing the recording.
Yeah.
Okay, we're back.
Okay, so I was talking about the why universal. That's one thing. Now, I personally feel that when there is social spending, what you do is that you try to identify people who should be included in the net, who should be the beneficiaries. Okay, they can be 40% of the population or 60% of the population or 80% of the population. Now, so when things go wrong, there are two types of errors that happen. The inclusion errors and exclusion errors. Now, what is an inclusion error? If some money is meant for a certain category of people and people who are not supposed to be getting, if they are coming inside the tent and enjoying that, that is an inclusion error. We say type A error. And exclusion error is one that this fellow should be getting it, but he's not getting it. So what happens with our PDS system, public distribution system, ration cards, and all other things that we have both inclusion errors and then exclusion errors. If you go to the villages in Bundelkhand or anywhere, you can see all the sarpanch and previous sarpanch and all these fellows will be getting their rations. Now, that is typically an inclusion error. And many of the people we go in interview, they said that we are not getting ration क्योंकि वो पर्ची मेरा तो वहाँ हवा में उड़ गया था लेकिन उसके बाद दूसरा बनवाया नहीं है. So that's an exclusion error. Now, what I would suggest is, instead of going in search when a country where 60% of the population needs support, is vulnerable, instead of going in search of who should be benefited, go in search of who should not be getting this support. So create an exclusion criteria and give everybody. What is that exclusion criteria? Create a disincentive, which means that people with four-wheeler, who own four wheels, who own a two-wheeler, maybe two-wheeler is too bad, a four-wheeler, okay? People who are income taxpayers, they need not get this 1,000 rupees. At those days, we gave 300 rupees, but now we are advocating now 1,000 rupees, at least 1,000 rupees. And even what Rahul Gandhi announced was also that kind of something like that, 6,000 per family per month. So now we are actually now thinking of giving 2,000 per person for this COVID time, for a period of 6 months and all that. So we are doing different kinds of small little experiments from INB. Now, so I say that you find that exclusion criteria, exclude people, create a disincentive for receiving basic income. And I said that if you take basic income, then you can't get this tax exemption or this tax subsidy or something else. You can't apply for a loan. Some things like that. It's possible. I mean, the income tax department knows all these things. They're experts in that. So if you do that, then it's much simpler and easier. By default, everybody gets it. And actually, all the amount of money you will save through avoiding transmission losses. And in this country, you can imagine, it is so easy at the delivery end, whether it is giving an umbrella or a bicycle to students or laptops to students, or in our country, our politicians love to give goods and not cash. क्योंकि goods में से थोड़ा सा you can take your own bite from it. So we can avoid all that. We can avoid a lot of wastage of national wealth. Okay, so I would say that would be a way of approaching it. Okay, now cash, if you are saying that it's not easy to, cash also may have problems of reaching people. We are now doing an experiment, which almost actually we are through with it. We have signed an MOU with IPPB, India Post Payments Bank, which is as good as any other bank. Now, the problem with Jandhan accounts, which was a big thing, was that 40%, 30% at any given point of time would be dormant, which means that the accounts are not being used by people. The accounts are not, as a result, what happens is that they go down and the charges apply, or it has to be a special category of zero balance accounts. So to revive an account, again, you have to put some money. So this poor fellow will get some 300 or 500 rupees from something. And then the bank says that you already owe us 358 rupees and he is given 100 rupees. See, for banks, for commercial banks, be it public sector or private sector, commercial banks, an ordinary poor man is not a natural customer. They have not designed themselves to cater to this. That's why they say he or she is unbankable. Okay. Now, what now we are experimenting and suggesting to the government is that let's do this Jandhan in the post offices. Post office has been designed for the poor. That's why post office में small savings रहते हैं. 100 रुपया भी डाल सकते हैं और 100 रुपया भी ले सकते हैं. When did we go and put 100 rupees in Punjab National Bank? Tell me. Good, we didn't put. so we are strongly going to advocate the delivery issue. You can solve it only through the post offices. The last mile only post offices have, and post offices, it's all digital now. They have really become, they're on top of the technological thing. We are now working very closely with them. In 6 months or so, we are going to come out with a report of what our experience has been. So the, I don't know, I think we have just strayed everywhere, but this design and Indian situation, in the Indian situation, you were asking me about what are the objections, is it?
Yeah,
Or
what are the
why?
criticisms? I mean, there are many criticisms that I have heard,
Yeah,
including, people behavioral patterns being affected and them becoming complacent if they start receiving money for nothing. That
yeah.
kind of argument. So how would you counter that? Kind of put that
See,
together.
there's a cultural knee-jerk reaction. I think we have to go a little deeper into this industrial ethic that we have inherited through this industrial civilization, where I think where you should not get anything without working. Only work, no pay, no work, no pay. These were all the things we have inherited of the 19th century and 20th century industrial work ethic. So we have a cultural knee-jerk reaction to saying that how can you get anything free? Now we have a very what you call, shall I put it this way? Um, we have a split. We have schizophrenia about this. Now take private inheritance for example in our society. We take it as natural. Or the other kind of inheritance is a public inheritance. Okay. Now, for example, if you take natural resources or natural wealth and all that, uh, actually government is not the owner. It's the people who own natural resources. National wealth is owned by people. They are the owners. And government at best is a trustee or a custodian of that wealth. So the owner has a right to ask the custodian about how are you managing my wealth, and the owner is also entitled to certain things from this wealth. Okay. Now, given that this, which is what I would call public inheritance, we have inherited something. So basic income should come as a public inheritance of the entire population. Now, you take in the, okay, this is one area. Those are the many questions there, many answers can be given to that. Now, this side, you come to private inheritance. Now, I inherit property from my father. As natural, we think it's as natural as the sun rises in on one direction. Okay. But it's also an arrangement we have created. Okay. Now, my father, when he was giving me money, he never made me work. He gave me unconditionally. Okay. Now, I have not become a drunkard. So, the children of all rich people should be drunkards then, if you give money. So, why are we believing in one thing in one domain and completely disbelieving that in another domain? So, I mean, let's examine that. So, if we examine that, then we realize that when you give something unconditionally to everybody, all citizens, I don't think they will become drunkards. Our study has shown us, in fact, one of the tribal leader, the head of the tribal village, we brought him to Delhi for our national conference after the study was over to also speak to people and what he felt, what his experience was. So he said, "Sir, before this project started, we had 5 drunkards in the village. After your project, we have 5 drunkards in the village. No, this has not created new drunkards. I mean, every village will have its quota of drunkards." I mean, okay. So that is bound to be there in every society and every this thing. So I think the community has a way of coping with them and blah, 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 all that. And let me not go into that. No, the point is that it only um, demonstrates, it only shows what our prejudices are about other classes. It doesn't say anything more to me, you know. So it's like, you know, parents feeling about children, adolescent children, that parent feels that I have complete control over my emotions, whereas this young fellow, he doesn't have control over his emotions. He's going to, so money being volatile, I won't give him money because he's going to go and buy cigarettes or booze or things like that, you know. So it's the same thing we feel about the poor. The poor have no responsibility, no discipline. They have no cleanliness, no discipline. They are dirty. They are irresponsible. They are drunkards. They beat their wives. So we have a huge folklore that middle class has created about the other classes. So the othering of that happens. Now, the thing is that we have not tried giving money unconditionally ever. We have been giving in a particular fashion, and that has been very inefficient. I would say, let's do it. Ekbar, there was a big conference of all school headmasters and school management people in Delhi. Some come about 100 log the wahan pe. Then this 100 log mein se one fellow said that there the whole discussion was about government regulation of school, private school managements. So the president of that association was giving speech. He said, पिछले 50 साल हमने गलती किया है, बहुत बड़ा गलती किया है, ठीक है, लेकिन आप कह रहे हैं हम जो whatever we are proposing to you, you're saying it is a mistake, we will not implement. You have done 50 years, for 5 years you do our mistakes. Let us try them. You have not tried our proposals ever. So the whole point is that we are stuck with one kind of prejudices, one design. So we need to open that. Now, if we want to move towards a better world, what we say, that whole idea is that we should create a better world for everybody, where everybody is included. So you can't, it's like you can't go to a doctor or a priest and say, I want to live, I want to go to heaven. To the priest, you go and tell, I want to go to heaven. So you tell me whatever your suggestion, but on one condition, that don't ask me to change my lifestyle. I will not change anything. So the priest or the doctor will just take you and throw you out, isn't it? So the point is that we are at a moment, I think globally we are in a crisis, variety of crisis. We are at a moment we need to open all our structures and re-examine them, review them, and bring about changes if we want that better world. We can't just continue with the way we have been doing things and expect a miracle to happen. See, what politicians promise, I don't want to go into that, but as ordinary citizens, that is my wish, that, you know, we need to, nothing should be wasted in a country like ours. Let it be efficiently given to whomever it is meant to be given. So those are the approaches. So these criticisms are all. Then the second criticism is also about we can't afford it. Now that is where, for example, you go in Goa Foundation. In Goa, there is an organization called Goa Foundation. They have done, in fact, all this public inheritance and this natural resources thing. They have done a lot of work on mines. In fact, if you take the economic survey of 2017, there's also another chapter on natural resources. Now, how do we look at it? And even their movement and their inputs, they have gone up to the Supreme Court, and they were the ones who got this order from Supreme Court, where Supreme Court has written that people are the owners of natural resources.
Oh.
And state or government is a custodian. So they kind of minutely went into the way accounting is done vis-a-vis mines, how the mining contracts are given and how the money revenue is seen and what is the revenue that comes, and they have calculated and they've done fantastic calculations and all that. So, I mean, that's a very interesting reading. If you read what they have all written this narrative in EPW. Now they say that the revenue that comes from the mines was seen as a windfall revenue. which means that you have not seen it as a proper revenue, rather than you see it as a windfall revenue. So there are many questions there internally one has to raise and see, stop this wastage. This is really, in my view, this is really a criminal. Uh, to waste your national wealth is really, really criminal. That's the biggest crime in our country. Now, they are also talking about, like, if natural resources are there, they belong to the next generation. You should preserve it rather than blow it up. So don't sell the what is it called, family jewelry at one go. Don't sell. Keep it for the future generations. In fact, they have a T-shirt called "The Future We Need." So these are all the questions we need to raise. Okay, so the argument called "it is not feasible" is a very poor argument. If you take Pranab Bardhan is a very well-known economist. Pranab Bardhan actually lays out various places where you can get the money from. Non-merit subsidies are there, and all kinds of things are there. He actually very succinctly puts where the money is. What we don't tax much at all, and what we overtax, all those questions we have to raise, and we have to ensure that we also, whatever is allocated is also spent well. So if we do that math, I think it is possible. It is possible that we can afford it. So non-affordability is a very weak argument, and people will drink it away it's a cultural knee-jerk reaction. It is not a very well-examined criticism. And the left criticism of this idea has been that the state, now neoliberal and all that, the state is going to wash its hands off and say that I'm giving you money and I'm not going to give you anything else. Okay, now so this is a bad idea. And they'll give money, and after that, so because it's also, the whole argument is also couched in this conspiracy theory, that they'll give the money, wash their hands off, they will not index it to inflation. So this fellow will keep getting this 300 rupees for lifetime. By then he can only buy a matchbox with 300 rupees. So they will run away. Okay. I don't think the relationship between state and citizen is so. I don't see it like that. I think the relationship has its ups and downs, and there is a conversation happening. If direct conversation is not happening, it happens through media or judiciary or civil society. So all kinds of conversations are possible. So washing these hands off and running away is not something. That's the left argument, basically, that you continue whatever is there. No, don't change. So this is one kind of left conservatism. But I think that has not had much purchase. And to say that this is a Trojan horse is basically, that is the criticism coming from the left. But in fact, the chapter written on universal basic income in the economic survey by Arvind Subramaniam, it was called A Conversation with Mahatma. Universal basic income, a conversation with Mahatma. Would Mahatma Gandhi have agreed to this idea? He would have agreed, he wouldn't have agreed. Both, there are both. Why he would have agreed? He would have agreed because in one of his writings, he said that I will give you a talisman to the policy makers, that look at the last man's face and then decide all your policies. That is the litmus test I'm giving you. Okay. In that sense, he would have been in favor of something like this. But then he was also a strong believer of the work ethic. He would have said that no work, no pay. Don't give money to people without they working for it. So I think he builds his arguments around that philosophical part of that, around those things. So we have all this. We have cultural objections, we have economic objections, and we have political objections from the left, and we have all kinds of objections to it. But then the evidence that is coming out is overwhelming. So that let me stop there.
Okay, lovely. So, one thing I wanted you to address was, since you mentioned that this is given to the individual and not the family unit, and
Yeah,
also since you now mentioned the no work, no pay thing, I wanted you to
yeah,
address the whole phenomenon of unpaid labor and the gender gap and how that's targeted through this scheme, and how that gap can be reduced through giving agency to the individual rather than the family unit.
yeah. See, I was saying that we have a schizophrenic mind. You know, we say no work, no pay on the one hand. On the one hand, we say no work, no pay. But all the care work that is given to families in the name of family role, prescribed cultural role, as a woman, you have to do this. As a woman, you have to cook, you have to do X, Y, Z. The rest, you know. Now, all that is taken as natural as the sunshine. Somebody cooks in a hotel, he gets paid. This woman cooks at home, nobody talks about it. So, is in a sense, we steal a large chunk of labor in our society. We steal. We are a patriarchal society. In the name of patriarchy, we have prescribed roles to people. So we steal labor. It's a theft. Now, if we open that theft and say, let us not do this thievery, okay? One answer is that you equally share work. Don't prescribe that X work. कपड़े तो वो ही धोएगी. If you go to rural areas, you know how it is talked about. If you take a broom and start sweeping, people will laugh at you. A man will never do that. So those things are not just cultural, lovely, exotic things. They are the ways in which we have actually discriminate against women. So that's a now here when the reason why we say individual and not household is to break that loop, is to break that circuit, disrupt that, and say that woman will have her own account and she will get her own money. And children's money also will go to the woman. That's what in our experiment we did that, and we also continue to do the same. Not that we mistrust man, but the point is not that. It's not about mistrusting him. It's mistrusting patriarchy, which is beyond that poor individual. Okay, he may not be actually patriarchal. That particular ex Prem Bhai. So, basic income in a certain way addresses that structural inequities and ensures that he and she are equally entitled. See, we say that everybody has equal right. That is one. It is one thing to say that it's a political right, but where is it culturally accepted and internalized and all that? Okay, Keshav, when he deals with the women, he may be treating them as other human beings, and as you're an enlightened man. But every man should become enlightened. That is when the shell of patriarchy will be removed. So the point is that in a major way, this addresses the inequities. And it doesn't go through अच्छा ठीक है we have to now evolve into a gender equal society इसके लिए 1 साल लगेगा क्योंकि 1000 साल ये लगा इसमें तो it will equally take another 1000 years. All that is bullshit. The point is that we have an opportunity. There are also leaps that we take. Slavery was all abolished from one day to another through by intervention. Okay, so we have to do these things. We have to gender empowerment and all that. NGOs go and do trainings and all that कि तुम्हारे तुम्हारे हक है ये बहना वो बहना, all that is fine, but the material conditions of those women individually have to be improved. It made a lot of difference. We saw in our villages with our own eyes. Makes a lot of difference when women have money, control over their own money.
So, before we wrap this up, one thing that's been bothering all of us, the Corona crisis, and how you see that. I'd like to know how you see that, because entire industries have collapsed. In the industry I work for, there's no light to be seen in the near future. So how do you see basic income in that context? And when we face such a crisis, it really pinches us. So then we start thinking about these things firsthand, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think there are two, three things actually. This COVID crisis in the more than as a health. So there are two aspects to COVID. One is the health crisis, and the other is the lockdown related crisis, economic crisis. So I think across the board, everything is affected. It's but then what the COVID has come and done and shown us is it has actually cut open the entrails of our society and has shown us how unequal, not just unequal, I would say how vulnerable certain sections are. Now, COVID comes and gives a wrap to all classes. But some classes have the cushion, and some classes can sit and work at home, and some classes can manage and survive. But then there are classes which are barely surviving, like, for example, migrant workers. I mean, we have seen visuals of migrant workers walking back home, and not because they just wanted to go home, because they had to pay a rent, and they had to buy food, and they didn't have the wages to buy food. So basically यहाँ पे मैं भूखा मर जाऊंगा, घर जाके मरूंगा, ठीक है? तो it has come and dramatically shown us the vulnerabilities of our society and how vulnerable our certain sections are. Now, it has to be addressed at various levels. There's no doubt about it. Okay. One of the things is supply chains are completely disrupted, broken. Now, there is also what Abhijit Banerjee also has been talking about, or other economists are also talking about it. There's a severe demand shock. So when government gives money to MSMEs and or waives taxes to them or gives cash to them, the point is, unless you give cash to people also, there won't be a demand stimulus. So first of all, so the major argument today we are making, and many other economists are making, is that you should put cash in the pockets of people for 3 months or 6 months. And at this stage, people will not save the money. They will go and buy, which means that it will keep certain industries alive, certain production systems going. Okay, so what it has done. It has not. It is nothing new that we are seeing about the structure of our society, but it has brought an urgency. It has brought an urgency. It's like a system on steroids. Whatever was happening, it was happening in a very unseen way, in an invisible way. But now everything is out in the open, and it's like, have to also address it at that pace. Otherwise, you say the economy is going to shrink by this percentage, that percentage, and then Moody the assessment or ranking. In Moody's ranking, we are falling, and some other ranking, we are falling. I mean, global economy is going to shrink, and this Geeta Gopinath, IMF people, World Bank people, you can see all the numbers, how bad the situation is going to be for the next 2 or 3 years. So, since we have been talking particularly about the vulnerable sections of our society, we are saying that please do this. Please give an emergency basic income for a period of 6 months. We have appealed to Ministry of Finance. We have appealed to the Prime Minister. We have written letters. We have written in the newspapers, and all that we have been doing about the vulnerable sections. But equally, I would say that the small industries, the shops have collapsed. Many people have vacated. We already see that to-let boards are everywhere because you can't pay a rent. Boutique hai, kahan se rent pay karoge? Your workers you can't pay, your rents you can't pay. So things are collapsing in a bad way. So, but the package that has been announced has not inspired confidence in different sections of the society. Our package has been a rehashing of the existing spending. There has been no new spending. In fact, some economists like Raghuram Rajan or Abhijit Banerjee or Guy Standings, they are actually saying like, look, US has gone into like spending about, this package is about 10% of the GDP. Our thing, I think, is about 1% of the GDP or something like that. I'm not an economist. So the point is that we need to look into the different aspects of the economy and address it in a very prudent way. That's what we have not succeeded in that yet. Hopefully, I think we will see more things happen, because from our end, we have given all our recommendations, and it's up to the government what it has to do. The whole point is also in India, there is central government, there is a state government. So there is always who should do what, and will they do this, or will these people do this? And there is this competition and conflict between them, one-upmanship between, there are also different parties. So in other words, it's a boiling pot.
Yeah,
So
it's
what
quite
more?
the situation, no?
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, anyway, remains to be seen. But
Yeah, we have to wait and see what's going to happen, and uh, we have to do something very seriously to protect the, both from corona and also from hunger and starvation. We don't know what's going to happen. I think situation in places like Jharkhand and Bengal, the eastern part, is really, really bad, with a lot of migrant workers going back, and then this is something unprecedented.
but anyway,
Yep.
to end this, I'd like you to suggest a couple of books or films or some literature that the layperson can, refer to and get more knowledge about universal basic income and these ideas.
Sure. I can mail it to you, and maybe you can tag it along with the
Yeah,
this
that'll be
film at
fantastic.
the
I
end.
can add it into the description. Because it'll be nice to
Exactly.
have those references so people can, go there and get
Sure.
deeper understanding.
Sure. Sure. I'll do that. I'll suggest some films. I think these days, who is reading? It's all people are watching. The only thing we have to appeal to people is that please watch till the end.
Yeah, if they do that, it's a big thing. Yeah. It's a big thing.
That is a revolution we will bring about, When when I watch a film with my daughter, she keeps forwarding, no, this is boring. This part is boring, I know. So have the patience to watch something till the end.
To impose a universal basic viewership.
I know. Yeah.
But anyway, thanks a lot for doing this. I'm sure people are going to
Yeah,
love listening to this.
absolutely wonderful.
Very,
Thanks,
very
Keshav, for having
enlightening.
me. It was really a pleasure.
Oh,
And good luck with your
likewise.
other series in the series.
Thanks a lot. Lovely to host you.
Bye-bye. Bye. Bye.